Good morning all. Sound ಬರ್ತಿದೆಯಾ? So my name is Pradeep. Formality. Okay. So now let's straight away get started with the subject. See, modern Indian history is very important from the mains perspective. So whether it is state services or the central services, it's very important because it's part of both prelims and main syllabus. And since it is a static subject, most of the questions can be expected. If you prepare in a right way, you can easily score more than 50% of marks with regard to history questions, because the nature of the subject is static. So there is nothing much beyond this, whatever we are going to discuss. And there is a systematic way of learning all these things. And to know that, first you have to understand the PYQs. So there are certain PYQs, please write down. In 2024, a question was asked, how far was the Industrial Revolution? How far was the Industrial Revolution in England? How far was the Industrial Revolution in England responsible for the decline of handicrafts and cottage industries? Handicrafts and cottage industries in India. Handicrafts and cottage industries in India. 15 marker, 2024. Write on another question. Examine how the decline of traditional artisanal 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 industry in colonial India crippled the rural economy. This was a question in 2017, again 15 marker. Right on, one more question. Examine critically the various facets means dimensions, various facets, FACET, of economic policies, various facets of economic policies of the British in India, from mid 18th century till independence. The British in India from mid 18th century till independence. 2014 question, 10 marker. Now take down one more question. Why was there a sudden spurt, SPURT, spurt in famines? Sudden spurt in famines in colonial India, since the mid 18th century. Give reasons. Okay. So these questions, they seem different. They seem completely different. But the demand is same. There are only few points which can be used as answer for both these, all these questions. So the only thing is you need to know how to approach these things thematically. They are not separate questions. If you have a broader understanding of one topic, you can use those points as answer here. Only the application part will differ depending on the nature of the question, what is the directive given in the question. So now let's not directly jump into the topic or the answer writing. First we'll try to understand how to read the question, because if you don't understand the demand of the question, no matter what you are going to write, it will not be effective and as per the demand of the examiner. It's not about you pouring in your man ki baat in the paper without understanding what is, what is asking or what is expecting. So nobody is going to give you like even 40 to 50% of marks if the demands of the question are not met. So, okay, first we will try to understand what are the Nitin na kare Nitin. First we will try to understand what are the, how to identify the keywords and the directives. Okay. So the keywords are something that is given to you by the examiner so that it can help you understand the question. Directive is nothing but the direction in which he wants you to approach the question. So these things vary from question to question. First you need to understand the nature of these keywords and directives to answer the question in an appropriate way. Okay. So just because you see the word industrial revolution, some people start writing about industrial revolution in England. Look at the first question. People start writing about industrial revolution in England. That's not the thing. And the moment you see spurt in famines, people start thinking it as a geography question. So that approach is also not good. So you need to understand the question holistically, read its directives, keywords, frame a question in mind, and then now first we'll try to understand what are the directives, different types of directives. There are two types of directives. It is very simple and you need to understand this. Firstly, simple directives. Simple directives means you already know it since your school days, like why, what, how, explain, elaborate, elucidate, enumerate, okay. They are all the simple directives. So when these directives are used in the question, you need to just write the straightforward answer and there is no need for any sort of analysis here. Just whatever is asked, try to answer that. You don't have to overthink. At the same time, there are complex directives, and the complex directives are like analyze, comment, discuss, analyze, comment, discuss, examine. And nowadays UPSC has started making innovations. How far, to what extent, how far, to what extent, and then comment, justify, do you agree, okay. They'll ask these kind of questions and they're all complex. And when sometimes they'll also add something called as critically comment, critically examine, critically analyze. So it can also be used. And when these are used, you have to bring different dimensions like the positives and the limitations. You have to support the argument, at the same time oppose it. You have to bring out the pros and cons, for or against. So whatever is applicable, you have to try to bring these dimensions. So it is not unidimensional answer, it is multidimensional answer they are expecting from you. Okay. So now look at the first question. Look at the first question that you wrote. What is the directive there? How far? Simple or complex? Complex. Complex. It means you have to write how industrial revolution in England impacted Indian industries, India's handicrafts and cottage industries, how it impacted. And the impact has to be in two dimensions, the positive impacts as well as negative impacts. So how far means you have to bring two dimensions. So how industrial revolution in England, how it impacted Indian handicrafts and cottage industries. So you have to talk about both the positive impacts as well as the negative impacts. And see, like we are in India and we were the colony of England. So since the question is asked in the Indian context, what the examiner is expecting you? You have to write it from the British point of view or Indian point of view? Indian point of view. Did Britishers do a lot of good to us, or did they damage our industries? Common sense, damage. So which one do you have to write first? How they damaged us. How their policies damaged our industries. So using your common sense, you have to bring the Indian point of view first. How they damaged us. And if at all there are some positives, there will be some positives also which I will let you know, and you have to bring that towards the end. Understood? Before conclusion you have to write these were the positives also, but positives are very less and the negative impacts are very huge. You need to write these things. Okay. So now look at the second question. What is the directive there? Examine. Examine means complex. See, you go to any doctor, you get the physical examination done, blood examination done. So the report consists of whatever is good in your body. Okay, the blood, let's say hemoglobin count is good, WBC count is good, but platelets count is less. The positives and limitations, both of it will come in the examination. So now when you are writing, when you are examining any policy, you have to bring out the positives as well as the limitations. So that's your job. Now look at the third question. Examine critically. So the various facets of British economic policies in India. And see, whenever they try to mention critically, there are two indicators for that. Examiner is expecting for you, when they use critically, the examiner is expecting you to balance both positives and negatives. Understood? Critically means even if you bring out more negatives also, it is fine. Okay? Examine critically. Critically comment means you have to bring out both the dimensions, and even if you bring out more negatives, it is fine. At the same time, what he is expecting you, you'll also have to mention some way forward on how to overcome these negatives. You have to mention a way forward on how to overcome these negatives. So, since it is a 10 marker, you cannot write a separate section for that. What you can do, in conclusion, you can write, after the independence, Government of India has taken so many measures, starting from industrial policy 1952, Make in India, to make India the manufacturing hub again. Like that, whenever critically is mentioned, you need to provide some measures to overcome the negatives. Negatives ideyalla? All of you are fluent with Kannada? Artha aguttalla? Okay. So, whatever negatives you have mentioned, to overcome them, what can be done? ಈ ಲೋಪದೋಷಗಳನ್ನು ಸರಿಪಡಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬಹುದು? You have to bring that angle. That's all. So, see, whenever simple directives are mentioned, just try to answer the question in a schoolish way. You don't have to worry much. ಏನು ಕೇಳಿದರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಉತ್ತರ ಬರೀಬೇಕು. Whenever the complex directives are mentioned, you need to bring different dimensions. You have to support the argument, you have to oppose it also. For, against, positives, limitations, you have to bring all of it. And at the same point of time, when critically is mentioned, then you need to emphasize upon two things. One, you have to bring more negatives, at least the equal number of negatives. You have to criticize, and whatever loopholes that you mention, you also have to provide a way forward which will help you to overcome the loopholes. So that is the ultimate strategy here. Understood? So now, what is the keyword in the next question? Sorry, what is the directive in the next question? Why? And lastly, they were asking, give reasons. Why means you will give reason only, no? So it is implied, it is implicit. You don't have to worry. Okay? So what are the directives? Now you are able to find out. Any question, first thing is you need to find out the directives. So directives is the indication given to you by the examiner in which direction you should answer the question. Should it be unidimensional answer? Should it be multidimensional answer? Examiner is telling you, is directing you. So without understanding it, if you directly jump into the answer writing, pour in what all that comes to your mind onto the paper, it will not help you to fetch good amount of marks. Okay? So this is the first thing. Secondly, there are certain keywords in the question. In every question there are certain keywords. So keywords are very important for you to understand the essence of the question. So directive you understood. Now in the first question, try to find out what are the keywords. So now, what are the keywords? Industrial revolution, decline of cottage and village industries. So, you have to answer how industrial revolution was responsible for decline of these things. So, why you have to find the keywords is because these keywords, it has two important functions. There are two important functions for keywords. The first thing, any keyword, it will help you to understand the demand of the question, what the examiner is asking. So that is the first thing. Second thing, you have to use it as subheading. You have to use it as the subheading. Okay? Within the answer, you have to use subheadings. No? So try to make these keywords as subheadings. So what is the benefit of that? Very simple. You will be indirectly communicating to the examiner, Guru, I have understood your demand. I know what you are asking. And it's a indirect way of conveying to him that you have understood the question. Therefore, you are using the same keywords as the subheadings. And it is also one more way, you are telling him, I am not deviating from the demand of the question. Whatever you asked, I am sticking to it. So that's a broader way of conveying to him that you are sticking to the demand of the question. So these are the two essential things within the question, which you need to understand before jumping into the process of answer writing. Understanding the directives, understanding the keywords. Moment you find any question, what you have to do? You have to identify the directives as well as the keywords. So let us try to understand. Let us try to understand this in a stepwise way. The moment you see any question, follow the steps. First step, identify the keywords. Identify the keywords. This is the first step. And second step, you have to identify and classify the directive. So, whether it is a simple directive or a complex directive, you have to identify and classify whether it is simple or complex. And this will help you to go to step 3. Step 3 is about planning your answer. See, any answer, it will definitely consist of introduction, body and conclusion. You know the IBC framework. Introduction, body, conclusion framework, you know. Introduction and conclusion, I will help you how to come up with a very good introduction and conclusion for any answer. But now, with regard to body, the moment you understand the keywords and the moment you understand the directive, that will tell you what should be there in the body of your answer. So let's say if the UPSC is asking, explain how industrial revolution was responsible for decline. Same question. First part, they are just asking, explain how industrial revolution was responsible for decline of Indian village and cottage industries. So what would be the directive here? Explain. Is it simple or complex? Simple. So you just have to write the negatives of it, how they badly impacted the Indian industries. So there would be only one part in the body. But now what is the directive here? How far? How far means complex. So there should be two parts in the body now. One part saying how it negatively affected us. Second part saying if there are any positives of industrial revolution on Indian cottage industries, you have to bring that out. Okay? See, understanding the directives will help you to decide how many parts are there in the body. Okay? So now let us move on to the next question. Just do the step 1, step 2 and step 3. Go to the next question. Identify the directives first. Identify the directives. What are the directives there? Examine. Examine means complex. What are the keywords there? Decline of traditional artisanal industries. How it crippled the rural economy. So there are two important keywords here. Decline of traditional artisanal industry, how it impacted the rural economy. Okay? So the question is asking you to examine. Examine. So if it is asking you to examine, the first thing, then look at the tone of the question. The tone of the question. Is it positive or negative? Negative. Look at the first question. What is the tone of the question? Positive or negative? How it led to decline. Decline is a negative word. Correct, no? So when the tone of the question is negative, it's a common sense for you to first bring out the negatives of it. Understood? If the tone of the question is positive, then it's the other way around. So the first two questions, what is the tone of the question? Negatives. So the tone of the question is negative. So you have to say how British policies led to decline of India's village industries, cottage industries, artisans, and how it crippled means negatively impacted, how it led to poverty, illiteracy, etc. in the rural areas. So you have to bring out the negative part first, and since they are asking you to examine, step 1 you identified the directive, step 2 you identify the keywords, step 3 while you are planning the answer, now you know in body there should be two parts. How their policies led to decline of traditional artisans, that is one part, and how it crippled the rural economy. Okay? So at the same time, this decline of traditional artisanal industry, how it crippled the rural economy, you will find out. That is the first part. There are some positives also of it. That is the second part. So the negatives will write as the first part, the positive will write as the second part. Okay? Go to the third question. Examine. Examine means two things, positives and negatives. So how their economic policies, various economic policies impacted the Indian artisans, Indian handicrafts, Indian industries. So positives as well as negatives. Go to the last question, fourth question that you wrote down. Why? Simple or complex? Simple. And what is the keyword in that question? Sudden spurt in famines during colonial India. Okay? So you have to say why there was sudden rise. Spurt means sudden rise in the number of famines in the colonial India. Since the keyword is very simple in nature, as well as the directive is very simple in nature, there are not many keywords. There is only one important keyword. Why there was rise in famines during the colonial period. So that is the only keyword. And since why means answer should be unidimensional. If you have time, only if you have points, you need to go to other dimensions, or else unidimensional answer is fine. You have to just give reasons why there was sudden rise in the famines during the British rule. You just have to support the argument, that's all. and at last they are also asking directly for you to give reasons. So why means definitely you have to give reasons, but they are explicitly asking you. So it doesn't mean there are two demands in the question, same demands. Your school ಅಲ್ಲಿ why ಅಂತ ಬರೆದಾಗ ಇವೇನು ಬರೀತಿದ್ರಿ? Why there was photosynthesis? There was photosynthesis because you have to give the reasons. Correct alva? So like that here also, whenever the why is asked, you have to give the reasons. But UPSC is explicitly asking you to give reasons, that's all. It is not any other, doesn't add any other dimension to the question. So now, did you understand these things? So this is the first part which you need to know. And all these 4 questions, they look very different. They look different. There are some keywords matching there. Decline of artisanal industry, keywords are matching there, but they look different. Now, there are certain topics, I mean this is one of the most frequently asked topics in UPSC mains with regard to modern Indian history. So the economic exploitation during the British rule. And it is not only asked with regard to mains, this is also a frequently asked topic with regard to prelims as well. So the nature of trade, the commodities of trade and economic exploitation, the economic critics, like who brought out this exploitation, who exposed this exploitation, all these things are also frequently asked in UPSC prelims. So this economic exploitation is a theme. So if you understand this theme, any question related to this theme, you can easily answer. Whatever might be the question, this topic can be asked in 100 different ways. But if you know this theme properly, then any question from this topic, you will be able to answer. Okay? So now, write down another 2 questions. Another 2 questions. Why did the moderates fail to carry the conviction with the nation about their proclaimed ideology and political goals by the end of 19th century. By the end of 19th century. Okay, 2017 question, 10 marker. 2017 10 marker. And now, write down another question. To what extent did the role of moderates prepare a base for the wider freedom movement? Prepare a base for the wider freedom movement. Comment. Prepare a base for the wider freedom movement. Comment. 15 marker 2021. 15 marker 2021. Now, for these 2 questions also, I want you to do step 1, step 2 and step 3. Find out what are the keywords there in question number 5. Find out what are the keywords there. Also find out what are the directives there. Keywords and directives. The question is why moderates failed to carry the conviction with the nation about their proclaimed political goals and ideology by the end of 19th century. Okay. So, what are the keywords? Ideology, political goals. You missed the first keyword itself. Moderates. Okay. And failure. Moderates fail. Fail is also a keyword. Okay. Political goal and ideology, other two keywords. So in this question, there are three important keywords. So since there are three important keywords, moderates, fail, political goals, and ideology. Moderate, failed, political goals, ideology. These are the keywords. Now, since the question itself is about moderates, in introduction you will address this keyword. In introduction you will definitely address this keyword. So in body, what is the directive? Going forward into the body? Why? Simple or complex? Simple. So you don't have to bring anything else. So in body, there are three parts. First you have to talk about ideology. Second one you have to talk about the political goals. Lastly you have to talk about the failures. See, you need not follow the same sequence of keywords that is given in the question. First failure ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ failure ಬರಿಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. You need not follow the exact sequence of the keywords that is mentioned. You can reorganize it if your thought process is rational. Because if you introduce someone to, like let's say, introduce friend A to friend B. You are going on street with your friend, you meet another friend of yours. The moment you introduce, what will you tell? His name is so and so. He has studied, this is his educational qualification, he is doing this now. You will do this or you will directly tell, he is a tarle nan maga, he is not at all serious, he used to do a lot of nonsensical things. How will you start? First, you will say positive things. Correct, no? So the moment you introduce someone, you will directly not talk about their failures. More attempt barda pass agಲಿಲ್ಲ ಗುರು ಇವನು. ಇವನ ಹೆಸರು ಇವನು ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹಂಗೆ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಏನಾದರೂ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಸೊ this is the right sequence and this is common sensical. It is derived based on your common sense. Fine. And now move on to the next question. What are the keywords there in that question? Role of moderates, wider base in the freedom struggle. Role of moderates, wider base in the freedom struggle. What is the directive given there? To what extent? Simple or complex? Complex. It means you have to bring positives as well as negatives about the moderates. So in the body, firstly you have to write how moderates led to increase in the base of the freedom movement, how they positively contributed, how they led to the increase in the base. And in the second part of the body, you have to write how moderates failed or how moderates, what were the limitations of moderates. Okay? So this is the second part of it. First part, positives. Second part, limitations. Why? The question itself is, the directive given is complex. To what extent? See, earlier, the moment what came, student used to think this is simple. Moment how came, student used to think it is simple. But UPSC, they have like altered the nature of the questions. Using these simple directives, they have started making it as complex. If it is just how, fine, it is simple. If it is how far, it's different. It's complex. If it is just what, it is simple. To what extent, then it is complex. Understood? So UPSC is evolving. So we need to evolve accordingly with them, so that we end up scoring good marks in mains and have better chances of qualifying this examination. Okay? So is this clear to you? Okay. Now write down another 3 questions. And before going there, Sir, MCQ ilva. This is mains marathon, not prelims marathon. When we meet for prelims marathon, I'll help you solve MCQs as well. But for now, no. We are not diverting from the agenda. Okay. So, see, early nationalists, there are two groups. What are the two groups? Moderates and extremists. Correct, no? So, how many questions are there on moderates? Two questions. Two questions. Which topic is missing? Extremists. This is called as asymmetric pair combination. When moderates and extremists, we'll read about them, we'll understand about them almost together. We'll read and understand about them almost together. And one part is asked twice, second part is not even asked. So, which is important for you? Extremists. This is missing, no? Can you neglect extremists for a long period of time? No. They are the ones who change the direction of the national movement. Correct, no? So, see, if you just look at PYQs, then it's of no use. So, you should look at PYQs in such a way that you should understand which topics are missing, what can be the probable questions for the upcoming year. That is the intent of having a look at PYQs. So far these topics has been asked. They can ask one more question on moderates also, but which is more probable? A question on one more question on moderates or a question on extremists? Question on extremists. Commonsensical. So this is what we call it as asymmetric pair, because moderates and extremists, they come together. They come together sequentially. And now one pair, out of this pair, half of it has been asked twice, another half of it is pending. So this is what I call it as asymmetric pair combination. Since one pair of it is asked multiple times, the other pair, it has greater chance of being asked. This is high probability topic. You need to know this. This is a high probability topic. And when you are preparing, you need to emphasize on this particular part. Okay? This is how you prioritize your revisions. Fine. So now let's move on to another set of themes. See, now write down. Highlight the importance of new objectives. Highlight the importance of new objectives that got added to the vision of Indian independence. That got added to the vision of Indian independence since the 20s of the last century. Since the 20s of the last century. 2017 question, 15 marks. It was 12.5, but we'll make it as 15. Now write down the next question. Next question. Many voices had strengthened and enriched the nationalist movement during the Gandhian phase. Elaborate. 15 marks 2019. 15 marks 2019. Okay. Now, let on the next question. Since the decade of 1920s, since the decade of 1920s, the national movement acquired various ideological strands, strands means values, okay, and thereby expanded its social base, discuss, 15 marks 2020. Another one, bring out the constructive programs of Mahatma Gandhi. During NCM and CDM, non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement. So 15 marks 2021. And then write down, throw the light on the significance of the thoughts of Mahatma Gandhi, in present times. 10 marks 2018. Okay. See these questions, just have a glance at them. Mentally start doing step 1, step 2, step 3. Start doing it. Have a glance and do the basic analysis. Identify the keywords, identify the directives. Try to prepare a structure of it. Are you done with the step 1, 2, 3 of all questions? And now tell me, what do you think about the demands of the question? Are they same or different? Same. Which two questions are exactly same? Many voices strengthened the Gandhian face. Okay. When did the Gandhian phase actually start? 1920 onwards. Okay. So that is one question. And you also wrote down the question, highlight the importance of new visions that got added to the freedom struggle during the 20s of the last century. 20s of last century means 1920s. And there is one more question. Since the decade of 1920s, national movement acquired various ideological stands and it expanded its social base. So it is directly talking about what? 1920s. So these three questions, it is talking about what? What all happened during and after 1920s. Now there is one more question. Bring out the constructive programs of Gandhi during NCM and CDM. NCM will start when? 1920. CDM will start when? 1930. So it is also talking about 1920s and onwards. Okay. And at last, when you know, see in the last question, so the constructive programs of Gandhi during NCM and CDM, if you know that, what all he tried to do, that is the basic of Gandhism, Gandhian values, Gandhian ideals. And then you have to bring out the application part of it. For example, Gandhi will emphasize on cleanliness and hygiene. That is what took the form of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Correct, no? So that is throw the light on the significance of Gandhian thoughts in the present times. Cleanliness and hygiene. Communal harmony. Gandhi did hunger strike in 1925 for almost 21 days. Why? To bring the communal harmony. Today also our society is ravaged by so many communal riots. So Gandhian values is still like 1925 did the hunger strike. Correct, no? So whatever he did in 1925 it is also relevant in 2025. Because even today there are communal riots. See the question, it might seem different. The wordings are different. The way they have asked is different. But the demands of the question, it is same. For some questions you have to just stop it there. For some question you have to link it to today, the present context. There is one more question, please write down. One more question. It is somewhat like on the same lines, but it demands your thinking. Okay, write down. How different would have been the achievement of Indian independence? How different would have been the achievement of Indian independence? How different would have been the achievement of Indian independence without Mahatma Gandhi? Discuss. Understood? See, this question and constructive programs of Gandhi, they are same. Understood? Gandhian values, Gandhian ideals, the constructive programs of Gandhi during NCM and CDM, they are asking the same. They are asking you to talk about the importance of Gandhi. How different would have been the achievement of independence without Gandhi means, it is asking you to say about the contribution of Gandhi. Understood? You have to praise Gandhi. So these questions, though it might look different, they all demand the same thing. And this question was asked in 2019. Why 2019? There is a relevance. 150th birth anniversary of Gandhi. So what does it convey? These anniversaries do matter. Whenever there is some significant event, UPSC will ask questions based on them. 100th anniversary, 150th anniversary, 200th anniversary. The questions will come. Understood? So now, Jyotiba Phule, the question was asked. 200th birth anniversary. Understood? So these anniversaries do matter. So if there is anniversary of any important personality, 150th or 200th, like that, if the anniversary is there of any important event, then it is our responsibility to keep a track of those things and prepare for those things in a holistic way, so that we have enough content to answer 10 or 15 marker questions. So this should be our job. Okay. So now take down 3 more questions. Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, despite having divergent approaches and strategies, despite having divergent approach and strategies, had a common goal of amelioration. Spelling is on the board if you want. Amelioration means upliftment. Amelioration means upliftment. Melakettuvudu of downtrodden. Amelioration of downtrodden. Tala samudayavana melettuva prayatna. Elucidate. Elucidate, simple or complex? Gone. Simple. Elaborate, elucidate, enumerate, uddukide and takshana adanna complex ankabaradu. It is simple. See, lucid means simple. Elucidate means explain in simple words. Elaborate means explain. Enumerate means list it down. Understood? They are not complex. They look complex, but they are not complex. Okay? So write down another question. Highlight the differences in the approach of Subhash Chandra Bose and Mahatma Gandhi. Highlight the differences in the approach of Subhash Chandra Bose and Mahatma Gandhi in the struggle for freedom. In the struggle for freedom. Third point. What was the, next question. What was the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore? Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore in their approach towards education and nationalism. Education and nationalism. Okay. So, Gandhi and Ambedkar 2015, Subhash Chandra Bose and Gandhi 2016, Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore 2023. So now try to find out what is the similarity in these 3 questions. Find out the similarity. They are asking for comparison between Gandhi with other important personalities. Correct, no? So these kind of questions we call it as personality based questions. Okay. So there are certain other pairs which are important. Apart from 3 important pairs that were asked by UPSC, there are certain other important personalities who can be compared with Gandhi. And you need to prepare for that. These questions will not be repeated because there are many more personalities whom UPSC can test. Okay. So see, if you know this is the nature of question, the personality based questions, then you can think, okay, which all important personalities are still pending. So from that direction, you can prepare a synopsis and be ready for these kind of questions if it is asked in the future. Now, for time being, just think which all other personalities can be asked in this way in comparison with Gandhi. Which other personalities? Tilak. Okay. Write down. You'll forget it. Tilak. Very good. And then Bhagat Singh. Fine. Bhagat Singh. Revolutionary approach, Gandhian approach can be asked. And then Nehru. If it is Vallabhbhai Patel, is a staunch Gandhian. You will not find too many divergences between Gandhi's opinion and Patel's opinion. Patel was a loyal follower of Mahatma Gandhi. Except for 2 or 3 situations, he did not diverge from Gandhi's view. And 2 or 3 points cannot be asked as a 10-marker question. Okay? So, they can ask a difference between Patel and Nehru. That is a possibility. But Patel and Gandhi can't be asked. Because Patel was a Gandhian. Most of the time, he subscribed to Gandhi's ideas. Whatever Gandhi's opinions were, he subscribed to it. So, there are not too many divergences between them. You cannot find a lot of differences between them. Okay? So, Patel, no. They can ask Patel with Bismarck of Germany. Patel with Bismarck they can ask. That you can be ready. Because that is a convergence of Indian history with world history. That lateral linkage questions can be asked. Write down Bismarck and Patel. That is a possibility. Fine. So these are few things for which you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared for these questions. Okay? And okay, and there can be one exceptional case. Periyar with Ambedkar. Periyar with Ambedkar. E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar or Periyar with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. See that both of them, they were opposed to Brahminical dominance, caste system. But there are fundamental differences between them. On surface they seem similar. Caste resistance movement or caste equality things, on surface they seem very similar. They are seen as the most important reforms of 21st century, rationalists, etc. But there are a lot of fundamental differences. So this can be one wild possibility that can be asked. So sometimes if UPSC decides to take you by surprise, that is something what they can ask. And they can also ask the comparison between Mahatma Jyotiba Phule with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Mahatma Jyotiba Phule with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. If not in comparison, they can ask you to highlight the roles and significance in upliftment of depressed classes or the downtrodden. Jyotiba Phule, they have already asked a full-fledged question on him. So this is a less possibility or less probability question. Okay? Nehru and Bose can be asked. Can be asked, not an issue. And there is one broader theme which is mentioned, which is missing. See, there are 4 or 5 different groups which dominated the national movement, which were prominent in the national movement. Moderates, extremists, Gandhians, Swarajists, revolutionaries, and INE. These are the most important things, no? Moderates, extremists, Gandhian movement, Swarajists, and then revolutionaries and INA. INA, 2 questions has been asked. They have asked 2 questions about INA. Royal Indian Navy Revolt and all, it is already asked. Gandhian movement you wrote down. So many questions they have asked. So, about extremists, they have not asked. About revolutionaries, not asked. About Swarajas, they have not asked. So, what does it make out of these topics? They are something important. They are something which can be asked. There is high probability of these themes and topics appearing in the examination. That should be the direction of your preparation. If you just try to find out the answer for PYQs, if you just by heart the answers for PYQs, it's of no use. It doesn't benefit you much. So you can find n number of analysis of PYQ answers and all. So they'll give you the answers and all. What's the use? It's not about learning the answers of PYQs. It's about knowing the FYQs, future year questions. What questions can be asked? How to be prepared for those questions? That should be the ultimate goal and objective of attending this class. Understood? Not just preparing for, preparing for PYQs, it is nothing but doing the post-mortem work. Some questions has been asked, you try to answer them. You think you are Kiladi if you are able to answer them. That's not the goal. And for every question, there is no different answer. So only if you logically group them, you will understand the broader theme or the broader idea why some themes were asked repeatedly. You can predict what can be the future themes. That is how it works. Understood? If you blindly prepare, you blindly read all topics with equal emphasis, then you will be lagging behind in the preparation. There are certain things which you need to emphasize during revisions. And whatever you are going to emphasize, it should not be blind, it should not be superstitious, it should not be based on merely your sixth sense or gut feeling. It should be based on proper logical analysis. Okay? There should be a reason. And what are the reasons? I have already given you some. So, there are certain themes and topics which have high probability of appearing in the examination. And by now, you would have realized all questions don't have different answers. There is a broader theme based on which they are going to ask the questions. So, if you look at them in a different way, they look different, they appear different, they are worded differently. See, when I say the UPSC repeats, people think, sir, same words are not there. Same words are not there. But since the decade of 1920s, 20s of the previous century, what is the difference? 1920s, what is the other way of telling 1920s? 20s of previous century. Understood? The question are same. Why moderates failed? To what extent moderates prepared the wider base? Okay? How British policies led to the destruction of Indian industries? How industrial revolution led to the decline of handicrafts? Various economic policies that led to the destruction of Indian industries. Why there was sudden spurt in famines? They are all the same things. They look different, they sound different, but the inherent demand of these questions, they are same. Okay? So now, what we will do? We will try to understand these things in a holistic way, so that any question on these topics, even in future, you should be able to answer it. Okay? So, first we will understand everything. I will give you all the themes, all the relevant important things with regard to these topics. Then I will help you how to frame the answer using these topics. Okay? So, not only the content, but how to transform the content into the answers. That is very important, because you would have read hundreds of pages of modern Indian history. But if you don't know how to translate that content into answer, and if you try to do it in the examination hall in real time, it will take a lot of time, because you don't know which point is important, which point should I write first, which point I should skip. So you will get lost in the thought process, and this is going to be a very time consuming process. So you will have to be prepared for it beforehand. ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಫಸ್ಟೇ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬೇಕು. Okay? So we learn all this process. in these 3 days. I will not be going into each and every topic that is mentioned in modern Indian history. So, the agenda of the class, there are certain themes which are important. I want you to understand that. There are certain themes which can be asked. We will discuss about that. There are certain themes for which I want you to prepare the content. I will tell you what are important. I want you to prepare the content. Now, I will show you how to compare different personalities, on what dimensions or what basis or what parameters you should be comparing different personalities. I will tell you. And based on that, I want you to come up with the points for some different personalities. Gandhi and Nehru, not a task, can be asked. Gandhi and Bhagat Singh, not a task, can be asked. But what should be the parameters of comparison? If you compare Bose and Gandhi with regard to industries, Gandhi was favoring village industries. Bose was favoring large scale industries, modernization. With regard to the government, Gandhi was favoring decentralization, Gram Swaraj. Bose was favoring centralization. Understood? A strong center. So, there are certain parameters based on which the comparison should happen. You cannot write Gandhi was from Gujarat, Bose was from Bengal, Gandhi's mentor is Gokhale, Bose's mentor is C.R. Das. That cannot be the answer. Gandhi was a lawyer, Bose cleared ICS. Right? These cannot be the pointers of comparison. This is like schoolish, kiddish. You will not get the marks for this. You can get that self-satisfaction of filling the pages. Hey, ನಾನು ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದೀನಪ್ಪ ಸಕ್ಕತ್ತಾಗಿ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. You will get that satisfaction, but at the end of the day, you will not be rewarded the marks. Understood? So, I will give you the parameters based on which I want you to compare. Okay? So, now let us get started with a very important theme or topic, that is economic policies. Okay. So, now see, first we will try to understand what was the situation of Indian economy before and after the British rule. So, with regard to agriculture, with regard to industries, we will try to have a comparison. Okay. So, this is the most basic thing. We will start from the basic most thing. So, you need to understand this so that in future you can realize the differences. Okay. So, now first we will try to understand the situation of Indian agriculture. Indian agriculture. Okay. So, what was the situation of Indian agriculture? So, before British and during British rule. See, before British, India was ruled by the native rulers. There were Wadayars of Mysore, Nizam of Hyderabad, hundreds of different kings were there in India. They were ruling India. And the rate of revenue that was charged was moderate. They were not demanding too high revenue. Okay. Secondly, revenue could be paid either in cash or in kind. Cash or kind. Whatever you cultivate, you can pay that only as revenue. Imagine you cultivate rice, you can pay your revenue in form of rice only. And third thing, there used to be investment in agriculture. Like they used to provide loans. For example, you might have heard about Takkavi loans, agricultural loans given by the kings to the farmers. And they were also constructing the canals to the agricultural lands, Vijayanagara Empire. Okay. So there used to be investment in agriculture so that the farmers will get benefited. And there used to be exemption from the payment of revenue during extreme circumstances like drought or flood, which can lead to crop loss. Drought or flood which can lead to crop loss. Okay. So this was broadly the situation of Indian agriculture. And see, there was no forced cultivation. Kings did not force you to cultivate any particular crop. Nobody used to tell you. Cultivating, you had the liberty to cultivate the crop of your choice. And now, during the British rule, see, we'll understand one more little background. In 1764, there was something called as Battle of Buxar. So, there was the war between three Indian rulers versus British East India Company, and Britishers won this war. And when Britishers won this war, there was a treaty that was signed, Treaty of Allahabad. And as per the Treaty of Allahabad, which happened between British East India Company and the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam, what happened was Britishers gave Shah Alam the pension of 27 lakh per annum plus some areas, some districts, Allahabad, Kora. And in return, what Shah Alam gave to British was, he gave something called as Diwani rights. So Diwani rights is nothing but revenue administration. So revenue administration of which areas? Three important areas: Bihar, Bengal and Orissa. Revenue administration of three important areas. So what is revenue administration? It has three important things. So revenue administration means you will decide the rate of revenue. So whether to collect 10%, 20%, 30%, you will decide the rate of revenue. Secondly, you will impose it on the people, and you also have the right to collect. Decide, impose, collect. Collect directly or indirectly, it's up to you. So all these three things constitutes revenue administration. So government will decide, British East India Company will decide how much percentage of tax I should collect from the farmers. Depending on the areas, depending on the fertility of the soil, depending on the crops that is cultivated. So they will decide what should be the percentage of taxes. Secondly, they will impose it on the people, they inform the people, will collect the taxes. Lastly, they are going to collect it either directly or indirectly through zamindars, talukdars, etc. It's up to them. So this is revenue administration. Okay. So when Britishers got this revenue administration, they started collecting the taxes, the land revenue from the Indian farmers. That is what we are talking about. That is the scenario we are discussing. During British rule, what all happened. So the firstly, the rate of revenue was very high. It was very high. So sometimes it went up to 2/3. The revenue demand was very high, or the rate of revenue was very high. Sometimes it went up to 2/3. 2/3 means 66% of what you cultivate. Understood? So if you lose control over 66% of what you cultivate, with remaining 1/3, you have to sustain your livelihood and you have to cultivate the next set of crops. So your survival itself is complicated. So that is the thing. Secondly, Britishers told that the revenue should be paid only in cash. Only in cash. And to get the cash, you have to depend on intermediaries. You have to depend on the intermediaries like traders, merchants, etc. You have to take your crop to the market, you have to sell it to someone, get the cash, then pay it in the form of revenue. And whenever there is dependence on intermediaries, it will lead to exploitation. Okay. So what is the price of tomato today? 80 rupees. The final consumer, you pay 80 rupees per kg. Let's say 100 rupees. You pay 100 rupees per kg. Do you know what is the price, actual price that the farmer gets out of it? 30 rupees to 40 rupees. So farmer will be paid up to 30 to 40%. But you are paying 100 rupees. What happened to the remaining 60 or 70%? Intermediaries. Understood? So whenever intermediaries are involved, it will lead to exploitation. Okay? And back then farmers were illiterates. They did not have awareness about the market prices in rest of the world. So they could be exploited. Their lack of awareness, their illiteracy was exploited by the traders, merchants, especially the foreign traders, because we had no awareness about the price in the market. Now let's say tomato is being sold for 100 rupees. If the farmer doesn't have idea what is the market price of tomato, then any trader can convince him to sell his tomato at 5 rupees per kg, correct? No? If you have the awareness, you will demand, Guru, market at 100 rupees, they give me at least 50 or 60. Understood? If you don't have awareness, you can be cheated. So, okay. So this is one thing. And next thing, Britishers did not invest in agriculture. Their main focus was on resource extraction. Focus only on resource extraction, not on investment, not on development of Indian agriculture. They were here to collect the taxes, make more profits, because East India Company is a private trading company and ultimate objective of any private trading company is making profits. They are profit oriented group. So they just expect more profits, nothing else. So how to expect more profits? By collecting more and more revenue from the farmers. This was their idea. And then there was something called as sunset clause in the land revenue policy. See, whether there was crop loss due to flood or famine, in those instances, you will not be able to pay the taxes because you are not able to cultivate and harvest your crops. So obviously, you will not be able to pay the taxes. And if you do not pay the taxes, then Britishers can confiscate your land. There was one provision called as sunset clause, and that provision told, imagine today is the deadline day for you, last day for you to pay the revenue. Today before the sunset, you have to pay the revenue. If you don't pay it before the sunset, then they can take away your land. That is called as sunset clause. After the sunset, you are going to lose the ownership of your land. Okay? So they never provided any help to the farmers. They were only focused on resource extraction. Collect as much revenue as possible. Whether they are going through crop loss, whether they are going through any difficulties, it did not matter to them. And these provisions will also take you to something called as peasant revolts later. Something called as peasant revolts later. We link it to the peasant revolts. But these points, it is applicable with regard to the economic exploitation as well as for peasant revolts, both the angles. So keep it handy. Okay. So now the next thing is there was forced commercialization of agriculture. Forced commercialization of agriculture. So they started forcing our farmers to cultivate cotton, indigo, jute and such other commercial crops. Why? Because it was needed for their industries. They made India as the supplier of the raw materials. So this is the provision. Okay. So now did you understand? So this is the difference between the rule of the native rulers and the rule of the British East India Company. There are a lot of fundamental differences. You need to know this. And now let us go on to see, we covered the base. See, what are the sectors of economy? Agriculture, industries, services. We covered the base. You understood the difference. Now let us move on to the industries. Now we will see what was the difference in the industrial setup and first we will see the Indian scenario. Okay. See, in India, most of the industries were village or cottage handicrafts run by the family. Within the home itself there is a handicraft. Within the home itself there is one small setup where the family members work and manufacture the goods. So there was village and cottage industries. Secondly, these industries, whatever there was in India, there was dependence on manual labor. It means they were not mechanized, or you can say minimal mechanization, very minimal. Okay. And then since the manual labors are used, human labors, human beings are used, there will be low efficiency. Low efficiency because human beings cannot be productive after 6 or 7 hours of continuous work. ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ 9 ಅವರ್ ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಕಂಡ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ 9ನೇ ಅವರ್ ಕಲ್ತಿರೋದು ನೆನಪಿರುತ್ತಾ? ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ಲಿ ನೋ. You will be physically present but mentally absent. You will be saturated by them. Okay. So there will be limitations with regard to efficiency when you are using the human based production. And most important thing was whatever profits or resources that were earned remained with Indians only. We were manufacturing the goods, we were selling it, whatever profits we got, it was with us only. It was never transferred anywhere else. Okay. And another most important thing was prices used to be high. Prices used to be high because handicrafts, there is a limitation to human production. So employing human labor will add to the production cost. Therefore the cost of produce was high, but the quality was also very high. So Indian goods, very high quality goods, and therefore there was huge demand for Indian goods in Western market. Okay. For example, the muslin cloth, cotton clothes, etc., that was manufactured in India has huge demand in Western world. Okay. So now this was the Indian scenario. And in England around 1750s, mid 18th century, there was industrial revolution. So we will try to understand what was the British scenario here. See, in England there was rise of modern large scale industries. Modern large scale industries means not small setups, was very huge setups, okay, with heavy investment. And production here was mechanized. Production was mechanized means there were machines. It was machine dependent. It was the beginning of the machine age. Okay. So instead of depending on the human labor, they started depending on the machines. And whenever machines are used, there will be increase in efficiency. And increase in efficiency, and whatever profits these industries make, definitely it is going to remain with British. They are going to reinvest it, establish new industries, all these things. And since it is large scale industry, there is something called as economies of scale. Something called as economies of scale. And economies of scale means if you are manufacturing something in large quantity, the cost of the production will come down. So if you go to Peter, England, below here, if you ask for one shirt, you might say 1000 rupees. But if you tell him, Guru, I want 1000 shirts of the same quality, and if you ask for the best price, he will say 500 or 600. Because to manufacture things in bulk, you have seen the wholesale market and retail market, no? So whatever is there at the corner of your road, that is retail. If you go to APMC, wholesale. Where the prices are cheaper? Wholesale. So in India, we are manufacturing it in retail, and in England they started manufacturing it in wholesale. So the cost of the production, the prices of the goods were cheaper. Prices of the goods were cheaper. Okay. Now, let's say you have two choices. You have two choices. Imagine you are all in England. You are all in England. You have 100 rupees Indian shirt versus 50 rupees British shirt. Indian goods, the quality is very high, handicrafts, and British goods, like you can say, the quality is little compromised because of machines and all. So now, which one would you prefer if you are a Britisher or any European? Indian. Sure? No. But most of you will think about continuing with the Indian goods. Because of the quality factor, you will think about continuing with the Indian goods. Now let's say, if it was 100, you will say it doesn't matter much, I will continue with the Indian goods only. Now let's say if it is 200 versus 50 rupees. Indian goods is 200 and British goods is 50 rupees. Which one would you prefer? British. Understood? Now let's say Indian goods is 300 rupees. British goods is 50 rupees. Which one will you prefer? British. Understood? So now, even after the Industrial Revolution in England, the British public, the Indian masses, they are preferring Indian goods only because of the very high quality production. So if this is the scenario, then see, you have set up large scale industries for which you have invested a lot of money, you have funded the inventions. See, there was the entire process got mechanized. You have manufactured the machines, you have invested a lot of money, you have taken a lot of risk. And when you are producing, people are still preferring Indian goods only. What will happen to your investment? See, you will realize the profits only when you are able to sell your goods, no? But your own people, don't think about Indians, your own people are not interested in buying your goods because you are unable to compete with Indian goods in your own market. Now, what the British government will do? They will try to make this scenario happen to discourage the consumption of Indian goods. So it happened recently also with regard to USA. Donald Trump imposed 50% tariffs on Indian goods. Understood? So what Britishers will do now? They will impose tariffs on Indian goods. So 200% tariff. So if it is the price, if it is 100 rupees and if you impose, in this scenario, the British masses will prefer which goods? British goods only. If you impose 200% taxation, then the masses will prefer the British goods only. This is what they did. Through the tariff policy, they imposed high taxation on British goods so that the European masses stop consuming the Indian goods, so that their goods are consumed in their markets. Understood? If you have to stop the European people buying the Indian goods, then what they started doing? They imposed 100 to 200% taxes on Indian goods that were imported in Europe. so that Indian goods will not be able to compete with the British goods. Understood? So this is how they secured the British market. Fine. So let us go deeper into this. Fine. So firstly, you have to understand the nature of the trade. The nature of the trade between India and England. So this you can write it as point number 4, and this can be, so this you can write it as point number 4, and this can be your point number 5. Absence of strong central, point number 5. Absence of strong central authority or the native ruler who could protect the Indian interest by imposing authority or the native ruler who could protect the Indian interest by imposing taxes or tariffs on the foreign goods that were imported to India. See, British were imposing 100% taxes because they had a strong central government. Why India is not imposing any taxes on them? Understood? Nobody here. This was the scenario. This is what you need to keep in mind. And now see, Britishers, okay, they are discouraging the consumption of Indian goods in India also and in Western market also. Now see, in the first scenario, we saw Indian industries unable to compete with British industries in domestic market. So Indian industries lost access to Indian market because of the price competitiveness. Their goods were more competitive, we lost access to Indian market. But still there was demand in Western market. And because of the tariff system, 100-200% taxes, what happened? We lost access to Western market as well to transport the raw material and the finished goods. So they'll take the cheap raw material and bring back the finished goods. Our industries will close down. Our farmers will not get good amount. At the same time, that railways, the agent of economic exploitation, is built using our money only. Railways is indirectly economically exploiting us, and we are funding our own economic exploitation. That is the beauty of India. We funded our own exploitation. Right? We did not even realize that we were looted. So that is how systematically they looted us, and that will take us to the next topic. We will go to it. And in meanwhile, did you understand this? Did you understand this? Okay. Now, say Britishers, they started ruling India. And when the British rule started in India, there were they started bringing British youth as ICS officers. So usually Britishers were given the priority in ICS, and you all know that till 1853 no Indian was allowed to appear in this examination. First Indian, Satyendranath Tagore, only in 1860s. So number of Indians was very less. Majorly it was Britishers who used to become the ICS officers. There was a discriminative system. Why we are talking about this is because these officials, the British officials who have come to serve in India, they were given the highest salaries. They were given the highest salaries in the world. Literally they were getting the highest salary in the world. So whose money it is? it is Indian revenue being paid to them as the salary. Understood? See, this work would have been done by an Indian at 100 rupees only, but they paid a Britisher 10,000 rupees to do the same work. And what Britishers did? The British ICS officials, whatever salary that you give them, so most of it, they used to send it back to their families in England. They used to remit it. You know remittance, no? When you go to work in USA and send back the money to your family, that is remittance. So the ICS officers who have come to India, whatever salary they are getting, see, they were given all privileges, allowances, servants, residence, food, everything they were given for free using our money. So whatever salaries they got, it was just their profit. So they did not invest it or spend it in India. So Britishers neither invested or spent the resources in India. They focused only on sending it back to their families in England. So our huge amount of resources got simply transferred to England in the form of remittances. Okay? So this is another story. And then you need to know one more very important fact. That is the wars. See, initially Britishers, they had only India under their control. Initially, only some parts of India under their control. Later there was Anglo-Maratha wars, Anglo-Mysore wars, Anglo-Sikh wars. And in meanwhile, they did not want to limit their area only to India. So Britishers wanted to expand their empire. In neighboring areas of India, like Burma, Nepal, Afghanistan, etc. And to fight and conquer these areas, they used, to wage the wars against them, they used Indian men, means our soldiers, Indian money, means our revenue money, Indian material, food, logistics, everything from India. See, they are expanding their empire using Indian men, Indian money, Indian material. So, what does it say? India paid the cost of British empire building process. India paid the cost of British empire building process. This is the beauty. Their empire got bigger, they started collecting more and more revenue from these areas, but who paid the cost for all these things? Indians. Understood? So now, this is about external expansion, external invasion, territorial expansion and all. Internally, there were hundreds of things. See, at the time of independence, only more than 500 kings. Imagine, in 18th century, how many kings might have been there? Hundreds of them, definitely. And Indian kings, see, they had almost complete autonomy. They were ruling their areas, and they had like all decision making powers. They were all powerful in their areas. So they had political, administrative, every power, like legislative, executive, judicial, all functions under them only. They are completely autonomous. But when Britishers came, when Britishers fought the war and defeated them, Indian kings came under the control of British. Indian kings came under the control of British. Anglo-Mysore war, Mysore came under the control of British. Anglo-Maratha wars, Marathas came under the control of British. So slowly, almost entire India came under the British control by around 1820s. Except for Punjab, almost entire India under the British control. Now imagine if you are an Indian king, so you used to have a court, Asthana. There used to be different types of skilled professionals under you. There used to be poets, historians, scholars, sculptors, architects, engineers, painters, singers, dancers. You have seen it during times of Vijayanagara Ashtadhiggajas, during times of Guptas, Navaratnas, during times of Akbar, Navaratnas, like that. So it was a matter of pride and prestige for the king to have such a scholarly people in his court. So indirectly, lot of skilled professionals, lot of skilled professionals like whether it was artistic, singers, dancers, painters, etc., or you can say poets, historians, scholars, etc., or you can say sculptors, okay, architects, engineers, okay, they are all employed by the king. They were all patronized by the king because king had complete control over the resources, territory, everything. He was all powerful in his area. Whenever king wanted entertainment, he would ask someone to sing, someone to dance. So there were a lot of people for that. So now at the same time, king used to employ the soldiers. So depending on the capacity, depending on the territory under the control, depending on his financial capacity, his ambition, the range of soldiers varied. In the army of Mysore, there were around 60,000 soldiers. In the army of Marathas, there were lakhs of soldiers, officially, unofficially. So depending on your ambition, depending on the area that you control, you used to employ the soldiers. Now, combining all kings together, there were millions of Indians employed as soldiers. Millions of Indians employed as soldiers. Correct, no? So there were skilled professionals, thousands of them, and millions of them employed as soldiers. This was the scenario. And now, with the conquest of British, the native rulers lost the autonomy. Let's say the Treaty of Subsidiary Alliance, etc. We lost the autonomy, and these kings came under the control of British. So they lost their autonomy to British. So now they have to pay annual tribute. They were controlled like puppet by British. So they don't have much autonomy. So in this situation, when they are financially, politically, administratively under the control of British, do you think they would be able to employ all these people? Can they employ all of them? No. Because you are financially not autonomous. Every year you have to pay tribute to British. And there were a lot of demands and restrictions imposed by the British. You are not completely autonomous. You were treated like a puppet. Your hands were tied. So now you are not in a position to spend so much on your soldiers also. See, the first thing the Britishers will tell you is to reduce the size of your army. If your army is 1 lakh, they will tell you reduce it to 2,000. What happened to remain 98,000 soldiers? Unemployed. Imagine you had a lot of architects, sculptors in your court. But now, to construct a temple or to construct any structure, you need money. Now you don't have the financial autonomy. What will happen to all those architects and sculptors under you? unemployed. Earlier, every day in the evening, you used to conduct some talent exhibition. So you used to allow some singers to sing, dancers to dance, painters to paint. So there was talent exhibition. You used to reward those performances. A lot of people were dependent on you. There were wonderful poets, wonderful scholars and all. You used to employ them, you used to give them the opportunity, you used to patronize them. But now, when your hands are tied, when you yourself does not have the resource access, then what will happen to all those people who are dependent on you? Unemployed. So, whether it was soldiers or these skilled professionals, they all became unemployed. So, when they became unemployed, they lost their access to livelihood. Whatever income they were getting, they lost it. But ultimately you have to earn something to take care of your responsibilities, no? For their sake of livelihood, what they can do? Which sector they can enter? They will enter into agriculture. Understood? There is nothing else for them to do. Industries are closed down. They are skilled people. They were providing their services. Service sector is gone. Which is the only sector of economy remaining? Agriculture. They entered into agriculture. But what was the situation of agriculture? Profit making or loss making? Loss making. Okay? Now, earlier we saw our industries also got closed down. There was deindustrialization, unemployment, poverty, etc. When these people who were working in industries, who were running the industries, when the industries got closed down, even they need some livelihood, no? Industries not working, service sector also not working, they need livelihood. So which sector they will enter into? Agriculture. So these people were forced to enter into agriculture. See now, the unemployed soldiers are entering into agriculture, the industrial workers are entering into agriculture, the skilled professionals are entering into agriculture. So this process where too many people are entering into agriculture because there is no other means of livelihood, it is called as overcrowding of agriculture. What is it called as? Overcrowding of agriculture. No, so many people are not required, but still there is no other livelihood. To sustain yourself, you have to enter into agriculture. So now, when so many people enter into agriculture, whatever limited land we have, that will get fragmented. So earlier, let's say, there was 10 acres of land with one family, 2 people were working on it. Let's say there was a family where there were 6 children, 2 working in agriculture, 2 working in industries, 1 working as a soldier, 1 working as a poet or historian. Okay? So when only 2 was working, let's say there was 6 acres of land with the family. What was the per capita land holding? 3 acres. 3 acres. So 2 persons were cultivating 6 acres, means per capita 3 acres. Now industries got closed down, they will enter into agriculture. Soldiers unemployed, they will enter into agriculture. Poets and skilled professionals unemployed, enter into agriculture. So how many people are dependent on agriculture now? All 6. So 6 acres of land divided by 6 people, what will be the per capita land holding? 1 acre. So the overcrowding of land will lead to fragmentation of land. So this fragmentation of land will lead to decline in productivity and also disguised unemployment. Decline in productivity and also disguised unemployment. Okay? Understood? Fine? Okay. So now, along with this, along with all these factors, there is something called as home charges. There is something called as home charges. See, in India, in British provinces, there were governors. So, governors of Bombay, Madras, Bengal, UP, CP, etc. Above governors, there was Viceroy, and Viceroy had Executive Council. Viceroy was the topmost British authority in India, and above Viceroy, there was Secretary of State, and Secretary of State had 15-member advisory council, and this was called as Council of India. Okay, and Secretary of State, as you all know, he was British MP plus he was appointed by Crown. Okay, so he used to be in London. Now, why I told you all these things is because, see, these people, they are in London. They are appointed by the British government. Their existence is not contributing in any way for India's growth and development. We don't want them. But still, all their salaries, allowances, pensions, all the privileges that were given to them, they were all paid using Indian revenue. They were all paid using Indian revenue. And not only this, even Britishers were fighting a lot of wars in our neighborhood, no? The defense purchases, defense or ordnance purchases were also paid using Indian revenue. They were also paid using Indian revenue. Using this, they were waging wars on the neighborhood, they were winning it. Whose money it is? Indians' money. Okay? Not only this, even the British soldiers in India, they were paid using Indian revenue. And all these things together is called as home charges. Together it is called as home charges. For their home expenditure or house expenditure, they used to charge us. Okay? So, it was called as home charges. Okay. So, now, how many points are over? 11th, okay. This is the 10th and home charges 11th. And now let us move on to the 12th and the most important point. See, initially we did not know any of these things. We did not realize only that they were exploiting us through the land revenue policy or trade or tariff or anything. We did not know any of these things. They were exploiting us, but we did not realize. Someone told us, some intellectuals, they told us, some learned ones, some scholars, they told us all these things. And we call them as the economic critics of colonial rule. Economic critics of colonial rule. In India, there are primarily three important people. One is Dadabhai Naoroji, who gave the concept of theory of drain of wealth, and then we have R.C. Dutt or Romesh Chandra Dutt. He wrote the book Economic History of India, and also he wrote one more book, Famines in India. And this second book is the inspiration for why so many famines in India during the British rule. This was the inspiration for that question. And there was Mahadev Govind Ranade. So he was advocating establishment of modern industries in India. He was advocating the establishment of modern industries in India. So, and along with that, there is a lot of other people like the founder of Hindu newspaper, Subramanian Iyer, Joshi. There are a lot of other people as well, but these three are very, very important. Okay. So, and now see, you have 11 points, and along with 11 points you have the impacts: deindustrialization, overcrowding of agriculture, poverty, illiteracy, unemployment, fragmentation of land, decline in agricultural productivity. You know the impacts also. Now these 11-12 points is what forms the basic crux of all these arguments. You look at any question that you wrote down in the first part. Okay? All questions can be answered using these 11 points. How far industrial revolution in England was responsible for decline of cottage and village industries in India. So, introduction, you need to write some important facts like in the beginning of 18th century, India's share in world trade was around 24%, and by 1947 it was less than 3%. It was less than 3%. What was responsible for this downfall or decline? British economic policies. Industrial revolution in England coupled with the British exploitative economic policies led to this scenario. Understood? Fine. So now we will discuss the structure for every question. Whatever questions you have written, we will discuss the structure. After completing this topic, we will take the break, lunch break. We will come back and continue our discussions. See, these 12 points answer for all those questions. How? You will understand. Firstly, take up that question. How industrial revolution was responsible for? How far the industrial revolution is responsible for decline of Indian cottage industries? In introduction, write the fact. 24% to less than 3%, mainly because of economic policies, exploitative economic policies and industrial revolution in England. So, the first point, you will write the subheading. You will write the subheading. After introduction, you will subheading. So, you will write impact of industrial revolution on Indian handicrafts and industries. So the first point, what you will write? Cheaper goods. Cheaper goods. So because of industrial revolution, they had large scale manufacturing, machine made goods which were priced very cheaply, and Indian industries could not compete with it. Indian industries could not compete with it, and therefore British, they started sending cheaper goods and Indian industries could not compete with it, leading to, don't directly write deindustrialization only, we will write some simple thing, loss of access to Indian market, correct? No? Okay. Second thing, trade policy. So you have to explain two scenarios. What was the trade before industrial revolution and after industrial revolution? You have to show that. Before industrial revolution, we were exporting the finished goods. After industrial revolution, we were exporting the raw materials. Third point, you have to explain the tariff policy and show how excessive tariffs on Indian goods led to the scenario of one-way free trade system. One-way free trade system. Okay? And then you have to talk about introduction of railways. Railways was the agent of colonization. Okay? So railways made the British goods reach the hinterland, the villages. So that is how our industries face stiff competition even at the village level. Okay? So because of these two things, loss of access to Western market. Western market was lost. And then you have to talk about commercialization of agriculture, because we were supplying the raw material for British industries, no? So the commercialization of agriculture. Okay? And commercialization of agriculture. And the next important thing, what you can write? So that will try to bring it in the later part. So whatever the impacts are, so keep it for a minute. How you can bring it? Any other thing? Loss of patronage. So there was no strong central authority in India which could bring the protective policies for industries. Okay? So these are the negative things. Now I want you to think about the positives. Okay? I'll be back in a minute. Meanwhile, think. So what are the positives? Railways, okay, like we have already written it as a negative thing, so we cannot rewrite it as a positive thing again. So what you can write is, when the livelihood options got dried up in the rural areas, see most of our industries for rural industries, handicraft industries, cottage industries based in rural areas. When the livelihood opportunities got dried up in the rural areas, masses started migrating to urban areas. So this is what led to urbanization. One positive is the process of or the phenomenon of urbanization. Second thing is, you can say, the beginning of modern industries in India from the midst of 19th century. Beginning of modern industries in India since the midst of 19th century. So that will also indirectly lead to urbanization, because most of the industries that started in India came up in the urban areas, Bombay, Calcutta, etc. Okay. So these two are the positives which you can mention. And one more positive what you can mention is, India got introduced to the world trade. So the integration of Indian market with the world trade. So completely opened up. Okay. So, and then you have to write the impacts of it. Write the positives and then write, however, the industrial revolution led to deindustrialization, mass unemployment, poverty, illiteracy, overcrowding of agriculture, fragmentation of land, decline in productivity, all these things. And continue by writing the supporting arguments. In the next paragraph, write the conclusion. The various economic critics in India like Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Dutt have clearly highlighted how the various facets of industrial revolution coupled with the economic exploitative policies led to impoverishment of India. Understood? So after writing 1 or 2 points positive, write the impacts of it, the outcomes of the industrial revolution, deindustrialization, all these things. Fine. And then in the last paragraph, try to bring about the economic critics. Now have a look at the second question. How the decline of traditional artisanal industry in colonial India crippled the rural economy. So first thing, you need to talk about industrial revolution, cheaper goods in India, deindustrialization. Second point, same, trade. Third point, one-way free trade. Fourth point, loss of patronage. Okay. Fifth point, commercialization and land revenue policy, where they started demanding high rate of revenue. Okay. Introduction of railways. British goods reached villages also, rural areas also. And then with regard to rural economy, you have to write overcrowding of agriculture, fragmentation of agricultural land, unemployment, backwardness, illiteracy, poverty in rural areas. Earlier, rural areas in India were the centers of economic production, but because of British economic exploitative policies, rural economy became crippled, and there was push migration from rural to urban areas in search of livelihood opportunities. Okay. So same points, there is nothing different here, you are writing it. And next question is much broader. Various facets of economic policies of British in India from mid 18th century till independence. First one, land revenue policy. So no exemption, cash only, high rate of revenue. Second one, commercialization of agriculture. Third one, industrial revolution in England, cheaper goods to India. Fourth one, trade and tariff policy. Earlier, we were exporting the raw material, later, exporting the finished goods, later, raw materials. One-way free trade system, loss of patronage, okay? So, remittances, wars, home charges. So, these are the various facets. You have to bring about all these things. See, whatever 11 points you wrote now, all 11 points, you can write it in this answer. Okay? Towards the end, again in the conclusion, Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Dutt, M.G. Ranade. Okay? So, this is what you can write. And then, now there is one more question. Why there was a sudden spurt in famines in the colonial India since the mid-19th century? Sudden spurt in famines. See, you cannot use the points as it is here. You need to alter it a little. Try doing it. Try doing it. And I'll help you. Try doing it for a minute. Take 2 minutes of time. Try doing it. What subheadings will you bring in this question? Or what points you will try to bring in this question? Try drafting it. See, you have to talk about, in the introduction, you need to write about one important person called as William Dilby. If you read NCERTs, you will find his name. He will say, he will give a fact of how many Indians approximately died due to famines during the British rule. He will say there were so many famines and because of which so many Indians died, crores of Indians died. He will give a number. Charles Dilby. So you have to bring his name. Okay? And see, this is not a geography question. So you don't have to explain what is famine, what causes famine, El Nino, La Nina. So you don't have to write all these things. This question is a history based question. So you need to answer it from historical point of view. So starting from Chalisa famine, 1784-85, there have been numerous famines in India. So you need to give examples of at least 3 or 4 famines that happened in India. So Chalisa famine, write down 1784-85. Chalisa famine. Great Indian famine 1876-77. Great Indian famine 1876-77. Chapania Akal, CHAPP, ANIA, Chapania Akal, 1899-1900, 1899-1900. Great Bengal famine, 1943-45, Great Bengal famine, 1943-45, and then write about William Dilby. William Dilby. Okay? And also famines in India, R.C. Dutt. William Dilby and also famines in India, R.C. Dutt. These are the facts. And now Why there was sudden rise in famines? That is what you have to answer. The first thing, land revenue policy. Very high taxation. Focus was only on resource extraction. Land revenue policy. Second point, lack of investment in agriculture. Irrigation and all was not expanded. Third point, commercialization of agriculture. Commercialization of agriculture. Diversion of land from food crops to commercial crops. See, earlier we wrote the same point, but not in this angle. Earlier we wrote, they forced us to cultivate the commercial crops to suit the requirement of British industries. Now we are writing, because of commercialization of agriculture, there was decline in cultivation of food crops, and that led to shortage of food crops. No buffer stock. Understood? This is what we are writing. Fourth one, lack of administrative empathy or maladministration. Maladministration. Royal Darbar during famine. Maladministration. Royal Darbar during famine. Lack of patronage. Lack of patronage like relief, support, loan, all these things. During famine, if you help the farmers, giving them some loan, giving them some exemption, then they can survive. Okay? These things were not there. So broadly, these are the answers. These are the points. Anything else that you can write? Famine go war go. You cannot write like that. There is one more point which you can write. Exporting the food grains even during famine. See, for sake of profit, they were exporting the food grains from India, which worsened the shortage in India. Exporting the food grains even during famine. For example, during Second World War, they exported the food grains from India despite famine in Bengal. They exported the food grains from India during Bengal famine. Okay, so that they can feed their soldiers. Right? And lot of famine committees were also there. So Stacey committee, okay, McDonnell committee, etc. But the reports were not taken very seriously, or the relief measures were not taken seriously. Write down two famine committees name. Stacey committee, 1877, and McDonnell committee, 1900. They are the famine committees. So British government did not implement any of the reports given by these committees so that they can help the farmers during the famine period. Okay, so this is broadly the answer. And you can also talk about the arrogance of British PM Winston Churchill, especially during 1943-45. So when asked about the famine in India and why government is not taking relief measures despite people dying and all, he told, if there is such a severe food shortage in India, then why is Gandhi not yet dead? So that arrogance also you can add to that administrative apathy or lack of empathy, no? For that point you can also add Winston Churchill's statement about Gandhi. Okay, so instead of focusing on the relief measures, they showcase their arrogance. Right? And ultimately this arrogance is what brought their downfall. Okay, so assuming that whatever they do is right, assuming that like people don't question them back, so this arrogance is bad. Okay, so whether it was during British times or in recent times, arrogance doesn't look good. So it has toppled the empires, and your empire is no great. Right? So we'll conclude this for now, and post break we'll talk about the early nationalists, and we'll also try to enter into the national movement, especially the Gandhian phase. Okay, so we'll cover the the Gandhian phase, and then all the questions on moderates and extremists, and also the Gandhian phase. We'll try to answer them today. Okay, so thank you all. See you all after the break. See you all at 2.